Hey, I'm John Cannell, and today on Preppy Kitchen, we're making some easy, delicious stuffing. So let's get started. First off, set your oven to 350 so it's nice and hot, and now you want about half a pound of bread, that's 475 grams. I'm using 2 baguettes today, but you could also use a nice big loaf of sourdough bread. We're gonna cut these into 1/2-inch cubes. You can rip them up, you can cut them, it does not have to be perfect. All sliced up, now I'm gonna give it a cube. You can use your favorite bread, it really doesn't matter what, as long as it's nice and crusty. If you love like a soft sandwich bread, it's just gonna kind of melt into mush in your stuffing and you're not gonna have that lovely texture. Once your bread's all cubed up, you have 2 choices. You can let it sit out for 12 to 24 hours so it gets nice and dry, or you can toast it in the oven, which I'm gonna do. So pop that onto a baking sheet. Spread your bread cubes out, and this is gonna go into the oven for about 15 minutes, but every 5 minutes, we're gonna stir it so nothing burns on the edge. In you go. While our bread's toasting, we have a little bit of prep work to do. So grab some fresh sage. Ooh, so fragrant. You'll want about a tablespoon chopped up nice and fine. If you're using dried sage, I would use like maybe a teaspoon and a half. Pop that into its own bowl. You also want 1 large sweet onion nice and chopped. The easiest way to chop onions is to give vertical slices, just like that. You keep the root ball intact. Give it a chop and you'll have beautiful little squares. Stuffing is one of the easiest things you can make, and for many people, it is a must-have in Thanksgiving meals. So like for Brian, there has to be stuffing along with some corn, mashed potatoes, etc. And this is just a really easy one to make. Full of flavor, you can change things up and add you could add little bits of sausage, you could add your own herbs, tons of different options, and you can really make it yours. People have cornbread stuffings. Really, you're just making a savory bread pudding and the sky is the limit. I'm taking a little chopping break. It's time to stir our bread. Just go ahead and move things around. And by the way, if you're busy during the holidays and you want to make some stuffing, this could be done days in advance. In fact, my grandparents kept giant jars of dried bread and they would eat it with tomatoes, feta, and olives. It's like a delicious snack. That's beside the point though. All right, back into the oven. You can't have stuffing without some kind of a bread or garlic. This is a must-have, and my recipe says 6 cloves, which means at least 6 cloves. I think I'm using 9 or so. Give those a smash to get the skin off, and now we're gonna mince them up. I grew up with thinking of stuffing as an American dish, but the idea of it is actually very old. The first recorded stuffing is from ancient Rome, and they would stuff chickens with spelt herbs, various organs, and other delicious things. So the idea of actually having a bird's cavity filled with things that you can enjoy along with the meat is very old and popular in many different cultures. Our version of stuffing with turkeys, really took off in the 1830s and onwards. And some people still actually stuff their turkey or chicken or whatever with stuffing, but for food safety, I like to cook it separately in a casserole dish. The other reason I like it in a casserole dish is you get a really lovely, crisp, crunchy topping, which is my favorite part. It's like soft on the bottom, crunchy on top, and if you cook it in a bird, you don't get that. Along with our garlic, we also want 3 stalks of celery, and you could have a big stalk, like I do, if you love celery, or small stalks. It's up to you. You can increase or decrease the amount as well. Just give them a nice chop so they're not huge pieces. I'm cutting mine down the middle, and then chopping it. The celery and garlic go in their own bowl. Don't mix them up. Our very last bit of prep are the other herbs. I have some fresh rosemary from my garden. It's still there. So just remove the stalk. You'll want about a tablespoon and give that rosemary a really nice mince. Nobody wants a giant piece in their mouth. Say yes to a tablespoon of fresh parsley. Flat leaf, please, that's the best kind. All right, and the final herb I'm using today is some fresh thyme. I love keeping a little plant in my kitchen. Grab a hunk. And that gets a fine chop too. The thyme stalks in this plant are super thin and soft. If they're woody, just remove the leaves. Grab a big skillet and 3/4 of a cup of butter. It's time to get to work. Pop that pan over medium heat and gently place in 3/4 of a cup of butter. Wait for this to melt and then we're gonna start adding things. So a stuffing needs to have some richness. It can't all be bread and vegetables. The butter is a must. If you want, you could go 50-50 butter and olive oil or your favorite high temp oil. First off, we're gonna add our sage and cook that for just about 30 seconds. Stir it in. It becomes a beautiful deep green color and the taste really changes. I detest raw sage, but cooked sage is delicious. Once that's a nice deep green emerald color, add your onion in. We're gonna stir that over medium heat for about 5 minutes until they're nice, buttery, and translucent. This stove is extremely hot, so I'm gonna go down to medium low. You don't wanna burn your ingredients, so if you're running hot, go down to medium low. If it's running cool, like on an electric oven, you could go up to like high, medium, high. You can make this in advance. You could toast the bread way in advance, or you could just make the stuffing the night before and then bake it off right before you're ready to serve. It'll be fresh and delicious. And really during the holidays, when you're so busy and inclined to be more stressed, you need to find ways to treat yourself right. And that includes prepping things out way in advance. So on the actual day of, you're not completely tired, exhausted, and frustrated. You should have a good time too. It's been 5 minutes and my onions are starting to soften, so let's add in the celery and garlic. Some of you will already know this, but some of you won't. Celery is delicious, and it's extra delicious when you cook it. I add celery to so many different things, and it gives a lovely depth of flavor. That could be chili, that could be bread pudding, soups, etc. Don't be afraid to just like toss it in, like stir fries, the works. It's really delicious. We're gonna cook the celery for about 5 minutes until it starts to soften, and the onions will be that much more translucent. But do not let the onions or garlic burn, so just hang out here and keep stirring. This is a great job for someone who would love to help you but just doesn't know how to cook. Okay, just stir this. You can like do some cleanup or take a break, and all they have to do is mind the edge and make sure they're stirring so things don't brown too much. And by the way, if you're thinking of, what can I add here to make this a little extra delicious? Instead of using plain butter, you could have browned the butter ahead of time. Browning butter is just cooking it in a skillet over low heat, stirring occasionally until it's kind of like a golden brown color. You could use brown butter for anything, cookies, cake, savory dishes, the works. It's always delicious. In fact, in my cookbook, I even have a recipe just for making brown butter because I like to make a big batch and keep it around and use it as I need it. Everything's softened up. It's time to add our herbs in, so sprinkle those over. Give it a stir, and you might be thinking, are we ever gonna add some seasonings to this? Is it gonna be gross? Yes, half a teaspoon of salt to start. Sprinkle that in. And half a teaspoon of freshly cracked black pepper. That's much better. Ooh, you could have also added leeks to this. That would be nice. If you ever see onions in a recipe and you want to switch it up a bit, you could substitute the onions for an equal amount of leeks, or even just go 50-50, and it's delicious. It's like a little bit more gentle, but still very aromatic and delicious. Everything's added in. I'm gonna remove this from heat, grab my breadcrumbs and go back to the counter. Now, in a large bowl, we're gonna add 4 cups of chicken broth. If you wanted to, you could use veggie broth and make this a veggie dish. Totally up to you. You'll have a lovely flavor. It'll just be slightly different. We're gonna add 2 large eggs. This will help set things up. I'm also adding the remaining teaspoon of salt for a total of 1.5 teaspoons, and the remaining half teaspoon of cracked black pepper. Mix that up so the eggs are nice and combined throughout. Now it's time to add the bread in. This rimmed baking sheet got me. We're also adding in the delicious onion herb butter mixture. Oh my gosh, the smell is so good. That really does smell lovely. All right, we're gonna give this a nice stir so everything's distributed. There we go. We just wanna let this sit for a few minutes so the bread can really absorb as much liquid as possible before it goes into the oven. Pop that aside. Grab your 9 by 13 inch casserole dish, and while that's soaking up, I'm just gonna butter it. It's really just a little bit of insurance that things won't be sticky and you'll have an easier cleanup later. It doesn't look like much, but it's gonna be so good. All right, pour this into your casserole dish. It's not the most attractive pour. Even it out a bit. Grab some foil, and we're gonna cover this up. And just like that, our stuffing is ready to go into the oven. Bake for 45 minutes at 350, then remove the foil and bake an additional 15 minutes until the top is golden and crisp. In you go. Give it a scoop and you're ready to enjoy. This could be my whole meal. It is so tasty. The garlic and the onions, the broth, all those fresh herbs. It comes together and it's like crunchy, soft amazingness. Oh my gosh. I hope you had a chance to make this recipe. And if you like this video, check out my side dish playlist.